Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to Website 101, Improve Your Nonprofit Website for Fundraising Success. We are happy to have you joining us today and appreciate you taking time from your busy schedules. My name is Kimberly and I'm part of the QGIve team. And if you haven't had the opportunity to work with us before, we're an online fundraising platform dedicated to helping nonprofits like yours raise more money. And how we do that is through webinars like this one. So today's webinar will be about 45 minutes with a Q&A session to follow, keeping our total time to just about an hour. We will be recording the presentation today and sending everyone that's registered a follow-up email with a link to the presentation as well as a recording and a couple other great resources too. So please be on the lookout for that in your email boxes tomorrow. If you are a social media user, particularly Twitter, we are live tweeting today's webinar highlights at #QGiveWebinar, and our username is QGive. If during the presentation at any point you have questions, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A and the questions box, and we will go ahead and field those at the end of the presentation. And also today at the end, as you exit the webinar, you'll be prompted to respond to a survey. So we would appreciate it if you did that because your feedback is very crucial in how we determine future content for webinars and other resources that we develop. So before diving into today's presentation, let's just take a peek at QGive's background, mission, and offerings. We've been helping nonprofits implement and grow their online fundraising platforms since 2007. And as the importance of online giving has grown, our mission has remained the same. And that's to help others fulfill their passion to make a difference. And we do this all through a comprehensive suite of fundraising tools featuring donation forms, event registration, peer-to-peer fundraising, text giving with outbound messaging, and auction events. We value our relationships and are proud to connect our nonprofit friends to our partner network in hopes that this helps increase your nonprofit's effectiveness and success. And with that, today we are very excited to introduce you to one of our strategic partners, Achieve. They're a digital agency specializing in digital tactics for nonprofits, and they do social media advertising, social media management, search engine marketing, search engine optimization, and websites. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's subject matter expert and speaker, Meredith, Creative Director at Achieve. And as you will hear, she brings an incredible expertise in website design. So over to you, Meredith.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here today. Wow, we just jump right into it here. This is where I might lose some of you. We start with the picture of the bathroom, but I wanted to really just illustrate the point before we get into our presentation today, that design does matter. It does impact how users interact with their environment, certainly, and that includes your website for donations. So, without good web design, we are confused and don't know where to click. I don't know if some of you might remember some of these sites back in the 90s. We've had some improvements. Some of these are still legacy sites out there, but certainly it was a different time. And we're working to improve sites today and make it a better user experience for our visitors. Sorry, I have a little technical difficulty here. Okay. So most importantly, when it comes to your site, if you don't know where to click, you don't know where to donate or do other important tasks on the site. So since fundraising season is upon us, there is still time to put the proverbial lipstick on a pig. Not that your site's a pig, but we can definitely improve upon what we're all working with. So what I'd like to do today is try to give you guys some, DIY tips and tricks that you can apply to your own website. Something that, after today, you can turn around and do this afternoon, tomorrow, and make an impact on your site right away. So we're going to go over the 10 most, common mistakes that we see when we're working with our clients, and then how to make those quick fixes, on your own. Okay, so, I think the first thing that we see often, and you can take a look at your site and, kind of audit it yourself, but it's a lack of engagement. I think that we've all kind of heard some of the stats. You can Google them, 0.05 seconds, how many milliseconds, from the time that a visitor lands on your site. And so they determine if they want to stay or not, if they're engaged. Most importantly, we're looking at what we call above the fold. It's an old newspaper term, but essentially it's, where the newspaper folded, and now it's where the screen ends on the bottom. So we want to really focus on that area, certainly, engage, emotionally, and bring in your visitor to the site further. So how do we fix that? We can do that through using visual impactful imagery. And we're going to talk later on about how you can select free impactful imagery later in the presentation. So, here we have kind of like, the difference between, the fight and the win. And this is the fight. We have a compelling emotional image of a puppy. In addition, it's also the copy, of course, is important, and the readability and legibility of that copy is important. And we'd like to know here too what the call to action is. The call to action is to donate. It's very clear. It contrasts against the background. So that's just some simple fixes. When you look at your website above the fold, is it impactful? Is the imagery appealing? Is it emotional? And is it legible? Can you read what your messaging is above the fold? Okay, so let's talk about some ambiguous navigation. Again, we're still above the fold. We don't see this too often. This would be probably a pretty extreme example of the icons in the menu instead of actual menu items. But one thing we do see is, it's pretty common, is more generic headings that don't really communicate what your organization does and who you serve. And user studies show that when users are shown menus where, what we do, who we are, who we hire, whatever this is, using this as an example, it forces the user to take a pause and try to determine where they're supposed to go into the site. Is the about under what we do? Is the about under who we are? So some of these more ambiguous, headings can just make the user have to think, and kind of slows them down a little. So the fix for this is to really use some predictability. So, we recommend that you use language that, users have become accustomed to, reading programs versus learning opportunities, about, those are, contact, those are terminology that people are used to, coming across on a website menu. So really, it's just, this isn't really the place to get too creative. We just really want to help our user get into the site and access the content that they're looking for. Learn about our organization, and then, fulfill any tasks, and then, donate, of course. Okay, so what is the site about? Again, we have really short attention spans, and when users land on sites, they don't have a lot of time to, read pages of copy. This site, this is a great example, actually, without having the close-up of the heading even, because, we really don't have imagery that's too descriptive. We can kind of get the idea it has something to do with maybe glass. But again, it really is forcing the reader to have to get in and read all of this lengthy text. On top of it, it's reverse text copy, which makes it a little bit more difficult and challenging to read. But we want to make our websites scannable. That's really the best practice, whether it's mobile or desktop. Make it scannable, big headings, smaller paragraphs of copy that really introduce interior pages of content inside. Okay, So how do we fix this? Yeah, so we make it more scannable. This is a great example of a pretty scannable site. And I'm not sure how you're all viewing this, but even in this smaller iteration that I'm looking at, we can definitely pull out the headings here, larger subheadings underneath. Just really trying to do a good job of direct, quickly explain kind of what the site is about, what the organization is about, who they serve, and then help guide the user into the site further. Okay, so back to clutter. This is something that we see with clients that we've worked with, that sometimes when either they come to us with a site that needs some work, or even a site that maybe we've helped them design and develop, that as we have additional people helping us within the organization and adding to the homepage, it can become kind of cluttered. I mean, it's similar to any kind of clutter, really. Whether it's in your home or office or whatever it is, it just kind of starts piling up on a homepage or any interior page, and it just makes it really difficult for the user to try to move their way through the site. This is obviously a really extreme example of it, but look at your site. Try to look at what's most important, and are there other elements on the page that are actually detracting from that important messaging that you have. So there was one case study of many, Home 24. They had a thought that perhaps they had a little bit too much clutter in their header section. So they did some studies and essentially enhanced their user engagement through just, again, decluttering this top portion. So, while it's kind of an instinct to run to make every element pop and contrast and stand out, sometimes what happens is all of those elements start fighting with each other. So take a look at your header. Does it give a little bit of space? Can your eye kind of go from left to right and pick up on all of the different elements and different calls to action? Or is it a little bit difficult to kind of pull each piece out? And this, I would say, is a pretty subtle example, but just the small tweaks you can see from left to right. They pulled out some of the copy next to the logo, kind of gave that some breathing space. They took out some of those icons. So, just the small tweaks can really make a big difference in your user engagement. So the fix to decluttering is really, one easy way that you guys can all do this on your own is just to make a list of the content that's really necessary that your users get to. What are those important elements? Is there anything that's distracting from those important elements? If it's not supporting the important elements information and it's just distracting, can you remove it, or can you change it? How do you prioritize the information in the placement? This is a really nice example of how they've had the alert bar here, kept all caps up here just to kind of keep that a clean look, although that's not necessarily. Upper and lowercase can sometimes help with readability, especially if you have a lot of menu items. In this case, there are just 4. And then again, just some real clean buttons here. So take a look at yours. Do you have the whole, do you have, more information in the header than is really necessary? Okay, this is one of my favorites. So let's talk about photography and imagery on your sites. So here we have images that I would consider to be kind of, pretty stocky looking photos. And I think that, these are pretty typical to some of the photos that we see. I think Salad Girl here, we've seen her. they just don't communicate, empathy or transparency, or, they're not authentic. So the fix to this is choosing good stock images if you don't have your own library of imagery that you can use. We always recommend to our clients that whenever they can, they do use their own photography. And I know sometimes, especially with nonprofits, that becomes challenging because of different, releases and sensitivities to some of the folks that we serve. So if you do need to use stock photos, there are a couple of tips that you can look for to help with the quality of that. So I recommend looking for photos with good lighting, natural lighting, anything outside, candid shots versus posed. The little boy here, doesn't look as though he's posing. Do have a couple of posed shots, but overall, just try to get, shots that don't look like a model inside of a studio. And then look for models with some imperfections. The little girl with the missing, cute little missing teeth here, and maybe, the skin isn't totally, photoshopped. This one has some natural lighting, but I will say, I think I need to update her because I've been seeing this stock image now in a lot of different places. But yeah, so, those are just some ideas of, the difference between, what kind of looks like a stock photo. And then again, if we have to go into this, what we can do to try to kind of elevate our stock photos. So I put together a list, and we're going to be sending out links after this. So these are all linked up for you guys if you want to go and take a look. So these are some free good stock resources. The one thing that I've had some success with, and you can try on your own, it really kind of depends on the search within the stock library itself, but sometimes I'll put like the word authentic or real in front of whatever I'm searching in a stock library. So if I'll say, instead of saying young couple, I might say authentic young couple or real young couple. And sometimes it kind of cuts through some of the more glossy stock photo looking images. And you get photos that, are a little bit more real life. So is your website slow? So this is a really big one, especially with so many people accessing your site on their mobile devices, with maybe, not fast data, depending on where they are or their plans. If your site is, coming in slow, that's going to, definitely increase your bounce rate. People trying to load your site and then bouncing off, just leaving the site before the content even, comes in fully. So a fix for this is a free, you can go online right now. It's Optimizilla. Again, we'll be sending out the links, but it's optimizilla.com. And you can upload your images, your JPEGs and PNGs. It's really simple. They do drag and drop or just upload. And you literally just click the button to optimize, and you'll get the same quality image at a much more reduced size. So it does all the work for you. You just need to upload it. You're able to tweak it a little bit if you need to, but really for the most part, you can upload these PNGs, JPEGs, slash their size. And then you've got this much lighter image, same quality that you can upload to your site. So you can check your existing site right now for page speed, and it'll let you know if your page speed is being affected by the size of your images. And you can then, if you feel as though, depending on what that comes back at, you can actually still take the images that you have on your site, upload those to Optimizilla, and then, optimize them and get them back on your site. You don't necessarily have to do it for all the images, but if you have some larger images, like, in your header or banner, sometimes we find some of our clients have small images, but large images have been uploaded to those really small spaces. So it's not just a matter of what it looks like on your site. It can also be, really large images in really small spaces that certainly can be cut down. So this is just a free, relatively easy way to speed up your site. Okay. So something else that we're definitely, discussing and talking about with our clients is low contrast. Low contrast, is something that affects, people that are coming to your site, both who have, that are site, that have site challenges. It can also just be poor usability for, folks who have no site challenges at all. I've got examples here on the left of some low contrast, and then examples of higher contrast. And this will come up when we hear people saying, I need a site that's ADA compliant, or a site that meets WCAG requirements. So we definitely, this is kind of a small part of a larger conversation in terms of how to make your site accessible. But again, it's something that you yourself could do right now without any kind of special, consulting or, knowledge of your own, just going into your site. Let me show you what you can do on your site today to start making those fixes. So there are many tools out there. One tool that we use, it's a really easy tool, is called the Wave Evaluation tool. And it's a plugin that, it's a Chrome plugin. And I'm showing two examples, what happens when you run a website through the Wave Evaluation tool. So on the left here, you can see, and it might be honestly difficult for you to see, there is white copy over this image. And it's just showing you here everything kind of lighting up, and in that it's low contrast. Whereas here's an example of a site where we're not seeing any contrast alerts coming up. They have a white background behind the copy here, and they've definitely paid special attention to make sure there is enough contrast on the site. And again, here, I just use a really quick example, yellow buttons with white copy versus a yellow button with black copy. It's not just good for your visitors who have, some site impairment, it's good for all of your visitors. Makes it easier for them to use your site, makes it easier for them to donate on your site. Okay, so speaking of donate, let's talk about donation forms. Yes, just please take my money. I want to donate. This is an example of a donation form really out of control here. It has the perception for a user when they land here that it's complicated. And that just negatively, impacts donation conversions when it looks like it's a complicated form, especially, on mobile. So, it's referred to as perceived complexity, but it's basically just comes down to like how hard something appears to complete. Okay, so the fix, multi-step, easy to move through forms. QGive, they've been launching their redesign of donation forms. And what really, we see here is a form that's kind of broken down the tasks and the steps. It helps the user understand as they go through step by step how many more steps are in front of them, and just really has simplified those tasks. Sorry about that. Found my own link. Okay, so that's the fix. Really, if you can take your form that you have today, short of completely doing a conversion, but is there anything on the form that you do not need to include? Do you need to have, a title on the form? Can you remove that? Can you simplify the form down to really, getting it to a place that helps the user make that donation with the least amount of perceived complexity and minimizes that cognitive load and helps them get through the form quickly and make a donation? Okay, so this is obviously a really big one. Donation forms that aren't mobile friendly. I've tried filling out donation forms on my phone and other forms as well. It's a lot of like making larger and smaller. It's really hard. It's not just perceived complexity, it's just hard to do physically. So this is something that, if you currently have a form that's not mobile friendly, it's something that you definitely want to address. And again, optimizing the form for mobile, it reduces the friction, it makes it easier. Whatever you can do today to optimize that form, making buttons that are big enough, increasing any space in between, making things bigger, clearer, removing the clutter. So, a lot of forms we see, there's a lot of explanation in between some of the fields. If it's not, required to read, if it's not really helping move the user along in the form, if you can remove it, get it out of there. And then this form, while it's less cluttered, it just lacks any kind of visual impact. So something that, we can see also in some of our clients' situations is, sometimes folks aren't going from inside the website to the donation form itself. And even if they are, at every, stage, we want to make that user experience as impactful, as we can. But certainly if you're driving folks to your donation page or your donation form from any kind of social media efforts that you might be doing, or anything that's going to be bringing in users directly to that page, that's an opportunity to, engage that user, to tell your story, to make that appeal, versus just a dry form that needs to be filled out. Even if they've come from somewhere where you feel like you've already introduced that transition from that social media post or whatever it might be, from that time to this time, again, that's that interruption. So just bring over whatever that emotional appeal is, bring it into the donation form page itself. So if you're able to, if you have the ability and flexibility on that page, even if it's just that image, we saw the image earlier of the puppy, something that can help tell your story or tell the story of, the impact that you're making, that's going to just help to, engage the user on the page. So kind of already covered this. Here, this is a great example. We've got, images here. This isn't something that you might be able to do, today on your own, but again, just the use of images here. I think they've got it broken down to, $25, helps, provide this, $50 helps provide that. So they've actually kind of broken out. I know many of you are familiar with that, kind of the specific breakdown of, the impact your dollar makes. So, short of that, if you can just add images, tell that story, again, just help to engage your user to convert for that donation. Okay, so again, this just kind of, touches on, that user engagement. Here's Charity Water doing a great job. They've got some really great ideas. If you're ever out there looking around, they've got some really good examples on their site and social media if you haven't come across it. Here's, again, just the usage of this really impactful image of a smiling child, clean water, and then that donation prompt laid right over the image. If your website is currently set up to not be able to incorporate the two together, I still think that, if you're able to even just do, 2-column or drop the image in above, anything to just kind of, bring that visual engagement into the donation page. So we can talk a little bit too about like the PayPal option. While it can be, very convenient for your donation, for some users, it can be potentially perceived as less secure when it's redirected off of your website. It just is going to depend on the user. Again, we're just kind of looking to cast the widest net here. And I would definitely say anytime we transition a user from an ad to a page, or from a page to a page, or a page to another website. There's just that moment where it's kind of like transferring a call. The call can be dropped. And when you get when you answer on the other end, you want to make sure you're still engaging them and making them feel comfortable with where they are. So if you have the ability to embed, donation forms on your site, that's something that, you probably want to consider. Okay, so let's just kind of recap here. Less is more. Make it clear, tell your story, and then, gain supporters and increase donations. And so I wanted to add this at the end, because this is one that is a high, a big topic, is like, what button color, what color should we make our buttons? And, there's been a lot written about this, and really what it kind of comes down to is, all the principles that we kind of just all went through, right? But when you have that call to action, is it clear? Is it distinctive? Is there contrast between that button and the background? Is there enough white space, enough, empty space around the button? That's really what matters. Just really making it easy for your users to understand what the direction is on your site, where that call to action is. And that's for both desktop and mobile. On mobile, another important factor with your buttons is it reachable by thumb? Is it difficult to target? Is it so little or so tight next to another button or another link that your user is going to accidentally push the wrong link and go in the wrong direction that they didn't intend? So look at both your desktop and your mobile. Make sure that there's a clear contrast between the two, and then on mobile, of course, that they can actually target it with a big thumb easily. Okay. Yep, no single color is better than another. I know there are studies out there and they've done testing, but really it has to do with the design in general and how that color relates on that page. Okay, so what I hope for today is that you guys have some takeaways that you can implement yourself, or somebody on your team. But sometimes we just get to a place where you might just not have the time, or you're just ready to go to that next step, and need that help getting from where you are now to where you need to be. So through our partnership with QGive, we're offering a substantial discount right now on website redesigns and projects. So if you're interested, we have the link here. We'll send that out, and you can go online and fill out an easy to complete form for these exclusive offers through our QGive partners. Okay, do you have any questions?
So, well, thank you, Meredith. I'm gonna come back and join you on screen here. We did have a question that I don't know if we got answered. I know Liz had put something in the chat and had asked about the donation form. So thank you. Of course, we love that you showcased our donation forms. And she'd been asking if what you were showing was available. And I know that I answered her back in the chat that it is, but I didn't know if we'd fully answered everything that she had in mind. So Liz, if you're still with us, please go ahead. If there's anything else you wanted to ask about those donation forms. I also know that Colleen had asked early on what about logos? And I think that was when you were on the example, was it German, Swedish, where they did the study and they cleaned it up? I think she was asking about logo size. So I don't know if you can maybe talk about that.
Yeah, so in terms of logo size, like, is there an ideal logo size on a website? Just talking about logo size in general, I think that you need to take a look at the logo that you're using. Does it have a really small tagline on it? So we come across some logos that have like, smaller taglines that are part of the logo. So sometimes we find that those logos get really blown up super large so that you can read that small tagline, which is good because we want to make sure that everybody on our site can, read all the content, including the logo and your tagline, which obviously, is important. But what can happen with like a logo, if we have a logo that's too large, it can take up just a large amount of, real estate really up on the top. Depending on the content, that works sometimes though, because again, if you have content that, you have enough content, keeping it nice and simple, keeping it nice and clean, that needs that real estate in that heading, it makes sense. If you have a logo that's so large, it can look kind of disproportionate to like a little, few menu items off to the side. If you need to make your logo extra large because of that tagline, if you're able to, and I know it's not always possible, but sometimes we suggest pulling that off, putting to the side. If you have a horizontal and vertical, and I know not every, organization does, but if you have a logo that is horizontal, like landscape versus like a portrait or a big square that you can use on the top, I would suggest using that logo. If for anybody out there who's considering logo redesign, that is something that we, offer to our clients is we'll do two logos. We'll do a logo that is a version, I should say, two versions. One that is, easier to fit into like the header of a website, and then one that you might find like on letterhead. I know a lot of logos are, legacy in that they weren't designed or developed at the time, where website headers were really a consideration. So I just would say, you just want it to look kind of proportionate. There's no magic pixel number height of a logo.
Okay, well, hopefully that answers your question, but Colleen, if it didn't, please jump back in the chat. A couple other folks have entered in, so let's see. April has asked, how long should you have to scroll on one page? We're at the end of a website overhaul, and on the mobile version, there's a lot of scrolling.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Something to keep in mind is that, we definitely see trends for longer scroll websites because people have become accustomed to that with thumb scrolling on a phone. Now, when you're going from a desktop version of if you're looking at mockups, when you're going from that desktop version, or if you have an existing site right now and you see how it breaks down in mobile, if there's no optimization to the design where you're literally taking the desktop version, which we're still doing, seeing a lot of desktop design first versus mobile design first. And if you literally take that desktop that you have now or that you're designing and you just take all the content and you just bring it down to one column, if your desktop is this high, that potentially could be 3 times that scroll on a mobile. Now, there is no like cookie cutter hard fast rule about how much scrolling, how many pixels it should be. But I would say that if you feel once you're on that mobile device that there's a lot of information that could be optimized on mobile, meaning maybe we don't include every single image that we have on desktop, to kind of reduce some of that height and get the user to the information that they need without, losing any of the quality of the design or I would say not necessarily the design maybe, but the engagement, right? Because we don't want just, a mobile page that's just copy, heading, copy. We want some kind of engagement there. So if you're able to, the short answer to my longer answer is you're able to eliminate any of the elements that you have on desktop when you move over to mobile to shorten it up, not because of the length of scroll, but just because it doesn't necessarily need to be there and it doesn't have the same impact it has on desktop and it makes it harder to understand the information, then remove those. The other consideration that you can have, if you feel as though everything that you have there is necessary and that it's, engaging, it's not distracting. A jump button that's either sticky on the bottom, or once you get down to the bottom where the user can click on it and jump back up to the top, that gives them that out when they're done scrolling if they want to get back to the top. I'm kind of like, in terms of like a sticky header on mobile, I think it really depends on the site, the nature of the site, and what kind of content the user might be trying to access on the site. If you have a very content heavy site where you have folks, that are going to be like in, areas where they're trying to, get information quickly, and they want to have that menu constantly sticky up at the top, that might make sense on mobile. In other instances, going back to the logo, if you've got a big logo because of your tagline and you've got a sticky header on that mobile, sometimes people on their phones, they're like looking at this little small box of content scrolling by. So sticky headers can be another, way to deal with the long scroll, but I'd really caution in terms of what that does to the screen size for you.
No one has asked, but I just want to make sure. Can you just really quickly explain sticky header?
Yes, thank you. Okay. So a sticky header, you can do it on any of the breakpoints, being your desktop breakpoint, your phone breakpoint, tablet breakpoint. So as you start to scroll, you may have visited sites and noticed this. The header on the top stays, the logo stays, the menu, everything on the top stays. It's almost stuck on top, just like your browser, where you enter in the website address. So as you scroll, that stays there. Sometimes, like I said, it makes sense to keep it up there. If you can keep it up there, and if you're doing a redesign, and you're like, I really want a sticky header, it's important that we see our logo all the time, then consider doing an alternate sticky header. So you maybe minimize the header, so it's a little tighter and smaller. Again, you're just really looking at it like, what is this experience like for my visitor who's using my website? While they might see your logo the whole time, they just might find it so difficult to look into this little like phone area that they have, and just find that they just kind of leave the site because it's just too difficult to, make their way through it. So try to always bring, so that's just talking about the sticky header. Lots to talk about the sticky header. Okay.
So jumping off of sticky headers, Nara, and I hope I'm saying your name correctly, has said, I work at a community health center. How do you balance the website being set up for patients versus donors?
That's a great question. And that's something that we, with every site that we're taking into consideration. There certainly can be, different demographics of users using the site. Different users accessing different content information on the site. And, whether it's the user who's coming to a site for services, or a user who's coming to the site to make a donation or looking for volunteer information, financials, or whatever it is, a lot of sites, even outside of the nonprofit world, they're dealing with different kind of users coming to their websites looking for different information. So we kind of look at it like that, through the lens of different like roads into the site, and trying to make it clear from a user perspective, kind of going off the design right now, but a little bit from the user perspective are the headings like in the menu, are they clear for whoever the user is coming in? Going back to like who we are, what we do. If you have users that are coming in there because they're looking for programs, make sure programs is up there. You're going to have your donate button. Make sure that your users that are there for your services, that those services are easy to access from the menu. And then maybe on your homepage, you have a call out there, leading those users coming for services on your site into that interior service landing page. Another way is to break up, if you have the opportunity to do 2 menu bars. So you can have like a main menu bar for that kind of concentrates in your, like for your services and the people that you serve. And then maybe we call it a secondary. Sometimes it's up at the top, and maybe that's for your donors, how to get involved, a little bit more information about the organization. That's a great question. And it's just looking for those clearly marked paths, like street signs for your users to make their way into the site.
So thank you, Nara. I hope that helps. If not, jump back in. Jennifer has asked, what about forms through a website? Recommendation. She needs HIPAA compliant for some.
For some forms or all forms?
For some is what her chat had said.
Okay. So HIPAA compliant, that's a good question. I think that in terms of, are we speaking in terms of, can you repeat the question? Is this in terms of design for?
And Jennifer, I don't know if you're still on, you might want to do a follow-up question, follow-up in there, but she said, what about forms through a website? Recommendations, question mark, need HIPAA compliant for some.
Okay. All right. So forms that there's probably, I'm guessing like you're talking about security.
She gave a follow-up. So thank you, Jennifer. Okay. Can you build forms in a website or use a secondary software? Well, I know that Brendan and Meredith can both answer this one.
I'm gonna let Brendan jump on this one.
Well, if I'm understanding correctly, there's certainly the capacity to use other software like QGIF to build out a form. You know, the HIPAA compliance portion where it's not something that we can necessarily advise on, but I know that you know, many of our clients find ways to make sure that our forms are and make sure that it includes the right content for that compliance. You know, when it comes to any website builders you may be using or web design firms you may be using, they can also help with that. Now, if you're running your own, I would heavily suggest reaching out to Achieve and seeing what they can do to help with any of those forms that you need to set up. But yes, Jennifer, there's a number of different options for forms that can be added to your website through third parties or you know, through shops and companies like Achieve can be added more manually. So you have options, just a matter of what's going to be the best fit for you.
And for everyone on there, Jill and Jennifer, we will have a slide after this that has our contact information for both Meredith and the Achieve team and us, of course, here at QGIV. And then everyone will be receiving that information tomorrow as well in a follow-up email. So Patricia had made a comment, not necessarily a question, but I thought it would, since we have a minute, it would be good to address. So I guess in their nonprofit, in their organization, they're helping people that are in grief or they're mourning. And smiles, like kind of your examples of the stock photos, are, as she said, very attractive, but they're not best for her page. So I don't know if you have any kind of feedback for that one.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we call it like, you know, we kind of refer to it as the fight and the win, right? So it's what you're fighting, what your challenge is, and then how your organization is helping the impact. So in your instance with a site that's, that's dealing with grief, you know, I think if you remember the image of the little dog, you know, in the beginning, it looked a little vulnerable. I think it's striking that balance between an image that definitely is something that is, you know, has an authentic look and feel, is respectful. But you know, if you want to focus on the images that show, you know, that kind of convey visually who it is that your outreach is to, who you are helping. I think that there is balance, and you know, we've done these sites. There's looking for a balance between, you know, the fight, the challenge, and then respectfully also including, you know, the hope and the impact. And you know, people also want to feel hopeful when they come to a site. You know, if they're there because you're offering services for grief, they want to look into the site and they want to feel that they connect and that they're, you know, that they're seen and that they're heard. But they also, you know, you also offer hope, right? So we also want to show that that's what you offer. So I think it's just finding that balance.
And Patricia just chimed back in, respect and hope, yes, and thank you. That was right on, it sounds like. Keith has asked, we are serving veterans, providing services that we and the veterans know they need, but so many think are unnecessary. They go to page 1 of our site and look at the available links, but seldom go to any of them. When I put everything on the front page, it's way too busy. Balance, question mark.
Great. Yeah, this is good because I think this comes down to storytelling, right? Like you don't necessarily need a menu board on your homepage of all the services. And, I think that if you have visitors and folks that are coming that don't understand and don't maybe connect to the services, I think maybe if you have stories that you can tell, if you have any stories that your users, when they come, can relate to, that succinctly, maybe it's the heading really just gets to the point of, this is, this is so and so, and meet so and so, and this is so and so's story. And there's, not a lot of copy, but just enough that kind of helps that users say, well, that kind of sounds like me. I can relate to this, and then click into here's how we've helped so and so. Here's how we can help you. Maybe it's not long lists. Maybe it's a few examples. And then if you do feel like you need to have lists, maybe it's below that. It's engaging the user, helping them relate to what it is that you offer.
And Keith jumped back in and said he did use why we do what we do and how we do. So
good. Yeah.
Okay. Vincent has asked a question. They serve seniors and mental stress, and if you have any insights on making a website senior friendly.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, so just from a usability standpoint, I would say that you definitely want to try to follow some accessibility guidelines. And I think some of these you probably already know, just start with the basics like font sizes, that contrast that we talked about. That's a really important one. If you have large light colored fonts, you can't read those anyway, regardless of the site. I think seniors are like any of us. I mean, they want to relate to your site. They want to feel good when they're on your site. They want to feel well represented visually. And so in terms of like designing specifically for seniors and a senior website, I think it goes down to all the usability principles. Make it simple. Don't be cutesy in your menu items. Just say our services, like that's not where you want to get too creative. Make it simple, make it clear, make it, usable, make it relatable, make sure that they understand when they come to the site, that they're represented in imagery and follow a lot of the same principles.
And I think, there's follow-up comments also from Keith and Vincent, but so and then Jacqueline, if you could put your question in the chat, you just raised your hand, but if you could put that in there, that would be helpful. I guess, sometimes obviously organizations, nonprofits are on, fixed, very small marketing budgets. So, what can you give people an idea of what a simple website really does cost? Because I know they saw your discount slide,
Yes.
but I know Vincent has said his income is low and he was a bit concerned. And I know Keith says he wants to talk to you. So what can you do for them? Do you do a free consult, and what would be a range for a simple website?
Yeah, absolutely. So through our site, you can reach out, you can talk to Clay. He will, Clay Williams, he will definitely, you can reach out to me. I will put you in contact with Clay, and we'll work with you and try to understand, what your needs are. We do work for really large enterprise level sites down to very small, nonprofit. We understand this is why we are offering this grant, because this is who we work with. We work with nonprofits, and we do templatized sites as well as custom sites. So we've created different kind of options to try to suit different budgets. And to try to make that work with you. So I would definitely encourage you to reach out. and let us try to see, you know, what it is that we can help with, or maybe help with your existing site.
And I think I have, unless anyone else has one, I have one question that was submitted for previously, but are websites still using sliding banners? I didn't really see that in your example.
Yeah, no. You know, they're just, I know people still love their sliding banners, but we're definitely seeing a trend away from it. Definitely video is super trending in Heroes. There's a lot of complications with video, but video is definitely trending. I think a single powerful image that conveys who you are, who you serve, is going to be the most powerful. We just know from user testing that a lot of folks don't even make it past that first slide anyway. So if you're going to use a slide, don't put anything on that second or third slide that's not somewhere else on your homepage, because your user may never see it.
And Jill was just wanting to clarify our language. Sliding banners, slide meaning sliders, and that's what I meant. Is I just wanted to clarify that that's what you meant too.
Yeah, the things, yeah, on the hero that move side to side or kind of like flip in and out. Yeah.
Right. Well, it looks like we're just about at time. So Meredith, thank you again for sharing all this great information. And thank you to everyone here for joining us today. As I'd mentioned, we are emailing a recording of today, as well as links to the presentation, other great resources, the resources Meredith mentioned. You'll also have information on that special from Achieve in there as well. If you would like to reach out to the QGIve team or Meredith and the Achieve team, the contact information is here on this last slide. Please don't forget to complete the survey. We hope the information that we covered today helps you with your website. And thank you again. We will be in touch. So thank you. Have a great day.